Welcome back to my channel, Fazbear's Menagerie of Madness, where I'll explore the universe of Five Nights at Freddy's and I hope in a new and unique interpretation of events. Every now and then a topic is brought up that catches my attention, such as why there are different designs for Springtrap. Is such a change of this major character explained away by Scott's wanting to replace a less accepted design? Or is it part of a larger clue that the community has ignored? Scott has said in the past that he doesn't make changes lightly, so after my investigation into the two Spring Bonnie design, I've come to the conclusion that Springtrap does have two designs, and I think I can explain why Scraptrap is the way he is. The earliest appearance of the Spring Bonnie costume is within the Silver Eyes graphic novel, where Charlie and John find an old newspaper cutting about the early days of the diner when Henry and William pose for a photo. The costume appears with rounded cheeks, large nose, two large teeth at the front of the upper half of the mouth, and a red bow tie. The design seems to follow Fredbear's design, where only the addition of freckles, ears, and a top hat are different. We find the alternative design within the pages of the Ultimate Guide, a yellow rabbit Springlock animatronic, one of the first created by Henry. This design is clearly different to the one William wore. Its cheeks are not obvious, all the teeth are the same, and the smaller nose is more angled and the bow tie is purple. This suit also appears smaller in stature. Within FNaF world, we get Spring Bonnie's description as male, female, it's a rabbit, who cares? This design is closer to William's version of the costume with the addition of the purple tie. Looking into alternative sources, I remember that Glitchtrap is also based on Spring Bonnie and could possibly be the original Bonnie with its purple accented colours, narrow nose, large teeth and eyelids with lashes. This costume looks more feminine than William's one. Perhaps the reference of gender was asked by the children at the diner. Perhaps the different costumes came from whomever needed to wear them, him or her. Within the Silver Eyes novels, William was considered heavy in his early days, although by the time he was posing as Dave Miller he had lost a lot of weight. Perhaps the larger design was available for William, while the smaller version would be for someone else. This could suggest that one costume was made for William while the other for a woman, such as his wife. In 1983, the fourth game gives us minimal detail about the costumes. Parts and Services room had a costume head, although with low detail we can only assume it is William's design. Prior to the bite of 83, William is helping an employee into the Bonnie costume, and William is clearly taller than the worker. The headpiece appears to have the larger nose from William's costume. The body of the costume suits the shorter person. This could be a sign that the heads and bodies are interchangeable. Again in 1983, for the events of Charlotte's death from the Silver Eyes novel, Charlie recalls the altered design of the costume with a smaller nose and no pronounced teeth. It should also be noted that within the graphic novel of the Silver Eyes, it shows both designs in use. While different illustrators may have caused this to happen, only one illustrator was accredited for this book. Therefore, two designs are in use in a single piece of source material. It also points out the first and third uses of the costume are established as being timed William wore the suit, although for Charlotte's death it doesn't confirm this. I previously have made a video titled "It's Not William's Plan," where I outlined William was the one in the car waiting for Charlotte to be taken outside. This is where the altered costume design was in Parts and Service. For the events of Into the Pit, we turn to the Fazbear Frights graphic novel. The costume used is the same one used by William during the 1970s and 1990s. This costume was described by Oswald as being worn by a man. We don't get the identity of the one who wears the costume, although I've previously suggested within the Foxy Go 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 minigame that William is in the back room of Foxy's without the costume. For the events of the Follow Me minigame, there is no detail for the costume. The costume has appeared to be placed in the safe room of the restaurant. The room is now open and is likely the same costume discussed to have been moved by Phone Guy back in 1987. For the events of 1995, we again go to the Silver Eyes novel, as the costume taken from a closet in the security office was the one William Afton wore in the past. Had the costume been modified in 1983, then those changes are not present in 1995. William is dragged off by the end of the story by the animatronics, and Charlie and Jessica won't see Springtrap again for another 12 months. Within the Twisted One novel, Charlie and Jessica go back to discover that Springtrap is still at the restaurant. Stored within a closet behind Foxy's stage, past a door dead bolted to the floor, Springtrap does not react to their presence. Springtrap is looked over by the two, and the body within the costume is seen to have been fused with the metal. Charlie only determines it was William by the dried blood soaked into the mascot's fingertips. They try to remove the parts until Charlie has a case of nausea. This could be caused by an illusion disc, as we find out in the next book. The comment was made that the suit's fabric is stiff with blood, yet the man didn't seem to have been rotting. I can only imagine this is due to the lack of smell from the body, as neither draws attention to the smell during this time. Within the events of the fourth closet, we learn a couple new things. Firstly, remnant experiments are taking place. The animatronics are receiving injections while William is having augmentation surgery with parts being surgically implanted into his body. William would use the injection on Carlton as a test, although Carlton died in front of William. If this was the first test of Remnant, it wouldn't be until Carlton regained control of his body that the injections would seem successful. This could mean that previously during the Twisted Ones, William would not have the Remnant injections and couldn't have regenerated within the costume. It was also shown to Jessica that Springtrap that appeared for her was an animatronic using an illusion disc, the same design of costume that appeared during the events of the Twisted Ones. This would mean that Springtrap found in the storage closet in Foxy Cove could be that same animatronic and would going to explain the lack of rotting flesh and Charlie's nausea. As the illusion disc doesn't recreate smells, only illusions, Jessica and Charlie had inspected an animatronic posing as Springtrap with someone's body still inside. This begs the question, whose body's in the alternate design? If William was trapped in his version of the costume, why not replicate that costume? Who was trapped in the alternative costume? The last time anyone was wearing the costume was in the 1980s. Looking for additional material, we can include the official colouring book that shows both designs. Springtrap's patchwork of parts on the black metal skeleton is on an Endo, not a Springlock costume. The face of Burntrap is from the alternative design of Springtrap, not William's version. For the movie, we see that the alternative design is used. As the movie is one of the last sources of information we have, why did it show off the first design and not the revised one? In the third game, the costume is back to being the alternative design. This suit is the first time we got to see Springtrap. The Springtrap costume would get burnt and officially get renamed Dark Springtrap. This would be followed up by Pizzeria Simulator when Springtrap would appear as William's costume design. This version would appear at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and be burnt in the fire created by Henry. So are the suits connected? Well, yes. Throughout all this investigation into the two suits, I discovered an important detail about Scraptrap. When comparing the pieces of the Scraptrap costume, I realised the costume contained elements of both in it. The larger teeth, as well as a second straight line of teeth, the cheekbones and eyelids. I find it hard not to see it, but it looks like the alternative version of the Springlock costume is wearing William's version of the costume. With ears poking through the head, it still kind of looks like a rabbit. Following the damage from decades of use of fires in the past, neither costume is in an adequate condition to contain a soul, although together they form enough of a costume to hold onto the body within. That's not William's body, as William took off the costume between the events of Silver Eyes and the Fourth Closet. Instead, it's an early victim, someone from an earlier time who has not been discovered within. Within the restaurant under the Pizzaplex, the surviving costume rabbit head and human head contained within is mounted onto the black metal endoskeleton that Gil in the first epilogues from the Tales in the Pizzaplex had brought together. The endoskeleton I have previously identified as Twisted Bonnie, see my video for more information. With an endo body and Springlock head, Burntrap is created, so the big boss of Security Breach is Dark Springtrap. So in conclusion, there are two Spring Bunny costumes in use at the diner and Freddy Fazbear's restaurant. William's suit was used up until 1995 when William escaped his spring locking and started to have surgery done on himself. The alternative design was involved in Charlotte's death and would trap someone in it for decades to follow. An animatronic that resembled the alternate design of the costume would remain at Freddy Fazbear's restaurant until it is moved to the second Circus Baby Pizza in 1996. Both costumes would coexist at Pizzeria Simulator and suffer from Henry's planned fire. Only the altered design would exist long enough to be fused with a new endo and become Burntrap. Thanks for staying with me till the end. To find out when new videos become available, subscribe for future content.